right, everyone, we'll continue now with our next panel. But before that, I would just like to do a very, very shameless plug. I'm allowed to. I'm the host. I think it's definitely... Is that all right? Sorry. Don't forget, at 3:30 today here on Stage 1, you can join us for the Global FinTech Awards. You don't need a separate ticket for that. Remember, you can just come along, enjoy the food, drink, and the awards. It's all followed by entertainment and networking drinks afterwards. That's immediately after the rest of the normal show at around 3:30. So... that was shameless, wasn't it? I do apologise. Right, let's continue with our next panel discussion, and that is AI in FinTech. And we've got a fantastic panel of expertise on this stage. So less of me, more of them is very much the approach to this. So I'm joined by, immediately on my left, David Palmer, blockchain lead Vodafone Business IoT at Vodafone Business. Next, Nelson Wooten, CEO and co-founder of Saskada. Also with us is Pawan Udanani, Vice President Data Tech AI Leader, Financial Services at Genpact. Also with us, Andrew Robinson, Product Director, Conversational AI Innovation at NatWest Group. And finally, Isabel Pitt, Digital Payments and Cards Director, Chief Operating Officer at Nationwide. I nearly did that all in one breath, but not quite. A warm welcome to my panel, please. I love those job titles, I really do. Right, let's start with some examples. That seems like a great place to begin. David, I'll start with you on this. Some examples of how AI has really impacted your operations.
I think the first one is customer services. Having AI agents, AI assistants that are able to deal with operational tasks intelligently is obviously one that has helped us a lot. The other side is in customer relationship management systems, where AI agents are sort of redefining how effective we can be at that with that data, allowing us to make real-time interactions to win and satisfy customers. And those are sort of two areas where we find it being useful. From a telco point of view, we believe that the future of AI is going to be the creation of data. And we believe that the data that we have with our users and subscribers, which is edge data based on location and the mobile user, is going to be a really important impact to the next generation of AI in operations and customer relationship management systems. But we'll go later.
I'll open that up to the rest of the panel, whoever wants to jump in next.
So I'm going to jump in here quickly, because the slide you can see behind you is something I cheekily brought along with me because I thought it unpacked this conversation really usefully. So this reflects a piece of research recently done by Gartner about what an awful lot of financial institutions are doing in AI. And I think it's super interesting to have a look at where they see success happening. And actually this falls largely into two buckets. Operational efficiency and customer service. And almost all of the big wins that are happening in AI are happening in one of those two spaces at the moment. It's certainly something we see in our business. Those are two areas we're focusing on. But I just thought this was a really, and there's a few people I see taking pictures, and good for you, you should, because it's a really useful piece of information. And I think the other thing it does really helpfully is unpack the word AI, which is a horrific term for a whole load of different types of technology used in very different ways. I loathe the blanket term AI, and I think actually it's really useful to really understand what it is you're trying to achieve, as people like Jason were speaking about prior to us joining the stage, and whether the tools that you've got before you are the right ones to solve those problems.
No, I do have a very scientific term, another scientific term, Nelson, about the slides, and when the cameras come out, it is the phones outification ratio. And you are currently leading on the phones outification ratio today. So I'll feed back on that at the end of tomorrow, whether you're still high on the leaderboard. I'll continue that down the panel. The main examples of how AI has impacted your operations.
I think, look, I mean, that's a very interesting slide there, right? So
That's great.
From what we see, what I see is that majority of the use cases, particularly in banking, in AI are internal facing, right? Apart from the customer service, of course, which is more on the front end, but particularly the large traditional banks are still kind of, waiting and watching and playing with the AI, while the fintechs are kind of leading the charge, right? In our operations, we use AI almost I mean, in every activity, everything that we do day to day. I mean, to prep for this panel as well, I used AI tools in Genpact considerably. So it's kind of part of what we are doing now, right? So it's everywhere basically. Yeah.
I think within that West, and particularly with the retail bank, which is the part of the bank I work in, we definitely have that split of customer service and internal operations as being sort of two main buckets of application, and we've actually got scaled applications across both at the moment. So we've implemented a RAG architecture to better answer questions to customers, and for us that's a real benefit in terms of how do we drive an improvement in customer experience, and the insights that we've got from that are really fascinating in terms of a significant decrease in handoff to an agent. So the bot can't answer and we have to hand over to a customer service agent. And as a result of that decrease, getting more answers right first time, we've seen a significant increase in customer satisfaction as a result of that. So the ability to get the answer to the customer and close that question down. Internally, we see a massive potential to dramatically improve the ability of our frontline staff to help customers. And we've started to use AI to do that. So we've got a summarization tool that's now scaled where we're helping those agents to understand the chats that come through from our chatbots, and they're lovingly referred to it as the blob, which is the text, the massive piece of text they get, which is the contents of all the chat. We're now putting a summarization engine on top of that, turning 4,500 characters, taking 13 minutes to read, into about 300 characters, taking 3 minutes to read. And that's a significant decrease of effort for them that they can now focus on in helping the customer and helping more customers more quickly. So we definitely see that kind of improvement in operations, but for us that's all linked back to how do you improve that customer experience.
I love that title, The Blob. It just tells you everything you need to know. Isabel?
Yeah, I mean, at Nationwide, I think we're really seeing the benefits of starting to partner, particularly in the fraud space. So from stand-in processing on cards, being able to assess huge volumes of transaction data to be able to identify false positives or false negatives, depending on the scenario. It's been hugely advantageous, and we're starting to see a real reduction in fraud. Given the landscape, I think some of the stats I've seen this year have been, the highest growing GDP is actually in the fraud space, if you looked at it as a GDP growth. Yeah. So I think that's going to be really important for us. We're also looking at how we can adopt it as part of disputes and, again, customer-facing, interactions and reducing the need for colleagues to intercept customers and engage in that way. So how can we service them more quickly and more efficiently? As well as just, starting to do pilots internally around how we leverage things like Copilot to support, us within the business and being able to, do our jobs better at a higher quality.
Well, I think most of you have mentioned sort of the customer element here and the customer experience. Lots of nods. That's always a good sign. And Isabel, I'll start with you on this one. Let's stay with the customer question here. For you, is that the most exciting area? Because at the end of the day, a lot of this is trying to improve the customer experience, make them stay, make them, a sticky customer, I think is an expression that's been used. Yeah. Is it the area that excites you most, I suppose?
I mean, it is. The ability to personalize product offerings, to be able to gain insights off transactional data, all of this is the utopia and the reason why we all do what we do. I mean, it's super exciting. You see some of the ecosystems like in LATAM who've slightly frog-leaped us being able to use, account-to-account or open banking style rails or technology. That's enabling them to now leverage that with an overlay of some sort of AI or machine learning aspect to it to really personalize and respond to customers in real time. I think it's, that's where we want to be. So yeah, for me personally, that's what keeps me doing what I do.
Like I said, the smile in your face says it all actually there. Let's stick with the customer experience side of things. Whoever wants to run with that next.
Yeah, I'll just come in because I think there's one statistic which was posted by, I think, the head of Goldman Sachs. It was one of them. If it's not Goldman Sachs, please don't quote me on that. But it was sort of, this figure of 300 million jobs being lost. And I think that if you look at the technology landscape we have now, which is AI, Web3, Web2, all of these technologies coming together, spatial computing, there's too much going on for us to think that AI is just going to be an enhancement of what we have now. I believe it will fundamentally reset business models and businesses and the landscape. And if we just look at customers and operations, I mean, who's to say that humans will be involved at all? I mean, if AI really plays out the way we're expecting it, there'll be no humans, right? In the digital world, it will be staffed fully by AI agents, right? End of story. And we will have AI agents, so I won't even interact with them myself. And then the other side was, I was at the GITEX festival last week. Sorry, plug. and
it's okay, we can end that. That's fine.
And the big thing there was AI on Earth, right? It was these AI robots, right, that will be in our homes, in our businesses. So even on the physical side, AI is expected to have a major impact. So I think, phase one, we're having the right conversation, which is incremental steps where AI can co-pilot and help us to be more productive. But I think, if it lives up to 20% of what we expect in terms of potential, we won't be involved, right, in those processes. That's my...
I think, look, if you, just on the customer experience bit, right, so if you take a step back, right, before AI, the fintechs have been driving the customer experience frontier, right, and the customers, if you go 5 years ago, right, when the fintechs were still kind of, 5-10 years ago, were still coming up, customer experience was the reason why the fintech industry stood up, right? Because the customers were not getting that experience that they get on Amazon or other e-commerce sites from their banks, and that's where the fintechs came in. And AI is just pushing it forward at 10x, maybe 100x rate now, right? So CX is everything in banking, right? And AI is just now pushing it forward.
I think
if we could just get a handheld mic brought to the front, please. I think we have a slight issue with the microphone there. Thank you. Sorry, do continue.
I'm going to go the other way. So I don't see AI taking over our world. I think we're decades away. God, my printer barely works. Right? It's hopeful that, we have self-driving cars. We've been hearing about that for decades. We are a long way off. But I do think it is operationally transformational. And I think, I don't like to think of this in the way that it replaces people or that jobs will be lost. We're a hugely high growth business at the moment, and we have an AI day once a month where we have cross-functional teams get together. You don't do any work, you just go and play with AI and come back and tell the business the stuff you find and learn and figure out how we can be more efficient as a business in delivering services. The focus around customer is key for us. Of course, it is. What business doesn't have a key focus around customer? But there are two different stakeholders in our business. So we provide a platform to banks. So there are two parts. There's kind of developers that engage with our platform and need to build software on it and understand our APIs. And there are kind of chatbot systems to help them answer obvious questions and a knowledge base that drives all that. But then there's business users, and we're working on kind of systems to help the business users become more self-service and empower them and drive. It's all about removing friction and making the process easier. Is it transformational? I don't know. It just feels incremental to me. Good, positive, the right thing. Look, AI is in everyone's pocket. Most people will have one time or another in the last hour picked up your phone, looked at it, authenticated. That was AI. We don't call it AI because we understand that. AI is the sort of term we use for the bits we haven't really figured out yet. Was it transformational? Well, I can log in a bit faster and it's a little bit easier and I do it a little bit more often. And I think the rest's like that.
And also the time you actually physically have to put your password in, you don't have a clue. Absolutely. Andrew?
I think there's a lot of interesting points there. I think from our perspective, that AI it's already becoming commoditized, right? Businesses have access to the same models. There's only a handful out there. Therefore, the real differentiator for me comes back to the application in the customer experience, right? And how you bring those tools to bear. So you really have to think about how does the technology intersect your business, but also your business models and customer experience. And internally, we see a future potential in terms of that transformation more around our products and which products get offered to customers. So how are we democratizing expertise within the business? How are we scaling our capabilities to a retail audience that just isn't possible today because we have barriers around cost, process, etc. And for me, that's the transformational element. It's not necessarily the technology; it's how the technology gets applied in your business.
Well, let's move on to the challenges. So whether it's within a fintech, whether it's in a bank, any kind of financial or insurance institution, when implementing AI, there are lots of challenges, of course. How do you overcome those? And I know that would be a discussion on its own. Pawan, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on that? I think if you could use the handheld mic, please.
Yeah, sure. So look, I'll park the data challenge because I'm sure someone will pick it up. I want to talk about the talent challenge, right? So and I'm going to focus on fintech particularly, not the the larger banks or traditional banks. Obviously, to realize the AI ambitions, you need talent, you need AI talent, and particularly the experienced talent, right? Which is obviously there's a story of that, right? Now, one of the observations that I have personally from fintechs is that fintechs tend to do things DIY, right? They want to do stuff because that's how the startups are born, that's how the startups are run. But one of the ways to mitigate that challenge is if you think about different delivery models, right? Can you partner with someone? Can you use global delivery centers, so on and so forth, right? So I think that's something that it's a mindset shift as well for fintechs to address. But that's a huge challenge, talent challenge in realizing the AI ambitions.
Should I go next?
Of course.
I'll mention the R word, risk.
Someone had to.
So someone had to, yeah. So, risk is a challenge, and there's a good reason, right? These models they're not deterministic. They're probabilistic. So, what you put in is likely to be what you expect to come out, but it isn't guaranteed. And that presents a big challenge, particularly for our risk colleagues internally, to understand. How are we keeping customers safe, secure, and how are we meeting our regulatory obligations? I think the steps that we've taken around that in terms of how we've architected our models, how we're using them in production with other systems and processes to check, how we're stripping out data before that hits the model, the guardrails that we're putting around that. But I think the biggest challenge for us is how we take our risk colleagues on that journey with us, and that for us, and the way that we've kind of worked through that is a process of education, but bringing them inside the tent. We're very lucky in that we have risk colleagues who are willing to learn and are leaning into this as well. So, it's how we formed that team and driven that forward to educate, learn together. We're on a process of discovery as much as they are, and making sure that we're meeting the requirements, but at the same time, we're also delivering for the customer.
I'll maybe just jump in. I think all those points are resonating. Data is a massive one. Regulation's another one. And obviously, it's clear that regulation is struggling to catch up. And AI will present a risk from the user fraud side, as well as on the other side as well. But I think one of the sort of key parts of the AI challenge, is around data and. The type of data for AI to be effective in fintech and other industries, is now the internal data that companies have, and for it to be effective, you need the stakeholders to exchange data in a timely way, and that data, to an extent, needs to feed into these models, which are really expensive, large language models, but also there's also some real-time data that needs to be on there, and getting everyone around the table. In this sort of industry where they're willing and able to exchange data is a massive challenge. Obviously, the benefits of that are huge, but that's the next stage of AI, right? As you said, we've all got the same models. It's all, and that data that we're screaming about is biased, right? It's Western data. It's only certain people who have generated that data on the net. So you get biased, skewed answers, right? Which you've got to spend a lot of money making not biased. So that is the data challenge is going to be the next one, the biggest one in my view, to unlocking the next phase of AI.
Yeah, I think I'd support that. I mean, there's no doubt that data is the big issue, and I think a lot of it is around rethinking how you approach certain tasks and getting them well documented to try to break institutional knowledge out of a few people's heads and get it available so that anybody can ask. You don't have to wait for so-and-so to be back from holiday and ask them, how on earth did we do X, Y, Z, right? So when we talk about data, in order to kind of get the value into some sort of machine learning or AI or large language model, you've got to feed it. And that can be a change of process, right? That can be like a new way of working in order to extract that value. Firing AI off or a large language model at what you believe to be your institutional data can be incredibly illuminating in all of the things it doesn't contain. Believe me, I tried it. It was woeful.
Isabel?
Look, the only other point that I might add is just around, what is the problem you're trying to solve, and be really clear for that, because I think there are so many organizations running towards, every problem there is and being really ineffective. So I think it's about how do you almost harness the excitement of what AI and the potential of AI to things that are clearly incremental, so you can start to increase your data set, you can start to increase your model, and you're not over-engineering it from the start. So that's probably my suggestion.
What I'd like to pick up on now is running from what you said a moment ago, Andrew, about risk. Because as a lot of you will know, we run a whole series of events across sustainability, procurement, supply chain, and you do things on AI. And a common answer and discussion you have is, just try it. Don't be afraid to fail. Go out and try it. What's the worst that can happen? Can't really do that in fintech and banking quite so much, because there's
Consequences.
Exactly, consequences. So let's run a little bit further on what you were saying, Nelson, about your AI days. That's your way of actually going about trying things and experimenting. How do you keep that spirit of innovation, which you need when it comes to an emerging technology, to get the best out of it, whilst in a banking, insurance or fintech wider space? How do you put the two together? How does everyone go about doing that? Nelson, you've given us some advice.
I can give you some. I don't know that I'm a great example for this, because Saskada considers the data it handles and processes on behalf of clients as clients' data and not Saskada's data, and we don't run any models or queries or questions on that. It's not our data, it's your data.
That's a disclaimer if everyone
Yeah, absolutely right. However, were I to, then there are identified process. Pseudonymization, as described by GDPR, is a pretty efficient way of kind of extracting behaviors but not associating individuals to it. But I guess for us as an organization, when we look and play with this, it's all the stupid edge cases that you really have to cover. When we were developing our chatbot to help developers, one of the developers quite helpfully pointed out, what happens if you ask it how to build a bomb? Ooh, that's a really good question. We better make sure it handles questions like that elegantly and calmly and without creating a furore or a fuss. So I think to the points already raised here, you've got to put guardrails around the data and be very careful about what you're feeding these models. It will interpret it as its best, highest, likeliest guess, and that might not be the answer you need it to provide.
I think, look, fintechs have the advantage here, right? Because they don't have the same large BAU footprint like the large banks. So they can afford to do more of the AI days, innovation days, and they can afford to spend more time and energy on thinking forward and thinking differently as compared to large banks. It's a tough one for large banks because they have to run a large business at the same time transform that large business. So there's no easy answer, right? But I firmly believe that just doing one innovation day per quarter or per annum or whatever is not going to solve for it. It has to be part of the culture and it has to be day to day. I don't have an answer for that, right? I don't think anyone has, but every bank will have to figure out how they do it in their environment, in their culture that fits them.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to the point I was saying, which, agree or not agree, but this is expected. If you only look at the investment that's gone into AI, it's trillions, right? And I think the discussion is, is it possible to get a return on that investment? And but the investment is signaling that they're expecting big transformations. Whether that comes in the next 3 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the end goal is big transformations. And to get that, my view, I mean, we're a telco who became the biggest bank in Africa by doing it via telephones, by the mobile phone. And now we're looking to bring embedded finance to IoT devices in the same way. So we've got to be really innovative. But to play in this game, my view is that you have to be all in. That it's going to be all innovation. And I do believe that it's going to be very transformative in a fundamental way to how we do things, and it will redefine what we mean by fintech and what we mean by intelligence in fintech. And that's my view. Whether it's 10 years, 5, 10, 20 years, I don't know, right? But I think that's the end goal.
But I fundamentally agree with that point around it. You have to be all in. I think the reality is customer demands are changing at such a pace that if you don't have the enablers and the tool sets in place, you're already behind the game and you're losing your customer market segment. So I think from that perspective, we're all aware in the ecosystem that we need to be all in. I think what challenges us is, one, risk appetite, level of investment available, current market segments, just the enablers really. Like, can you access all of this interesting data and put it into one place? I mean, it's really simple things that everyone's at varying different levels of maturity on. So I think that in itself is where we need to overcome. And once we're at that baseline place, then we can really see how accelerated, like will we compound or will we just go slow and continue to iterate? So it'll be quite interesting.
We hit exactly that problem, and in fact it was cross-functional teams that solved it, right?
Really?
So because everyone moves at different paces, right? So the software guys are like, AI, whoa. The sales guys are like, whoa, hang on a minute, what about my job? and actually you need to mix all of these into like cross-functional teams. We found worked really, really well. And it kind of created a baseline of innovation that wasn't too scary for anybody. But it was an interesting journey.
A baseline of innovation that wasn't too scary. I love that expression. It's progressive and yet cuddly at the same time. Andrew, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on your point about sort of culture, right, and kind of how do you breed that. And I think one of the really important things for us is that it isn't just about playing around with the technology, it's about scaling the technology. Yeah. Because, I think firstly that's like a personal motivator for teams, and particularly when I think about my product team, they're all motivated by seeing things in market, touching customers, changing, the experience. But you learn so much through that process, right, of taking things from just a hack day through to actual market, that it's radically changed how we're thinking about, how do we build and deploy these technologies internally. So for me, it's not necessarily about, creating that cadence of playing around with stuff. It's about how you create the cadence internally to have that pipeline of activity that's reaching the customer's hands.
There's plenty more I want to go into around trends and putting you all on the spot for a lesson you've learned on your AI journey. In fact, I've told you that's coming now. Puts you less on the spot, so I've shot myself in the foot ever so slightly there. But are there any questions from the room? Yes, there is immediately. That's the fastest hand today.
Hi, myself is Debasis. I'm a founder of FinTech Global. So we are into FinTech space for the last few years, right? So my questions in the banking space, right? What is the things that's slowing down the AI and Gen AI in the banking space? Is it a regulatory, pressure, or is it bias between the quality of data?
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of everything. In all honesty, I think, from a regulatory landscape, there's some we're still learning about it. So they're going on a journey just as much as we are. I think, as I've mentioned, the enablers that need to be in place in order for us to actually leverage the AI. When you've got disparate architecture, you're a hybrid of on-prem, old mainframes with a bunch of cloud-based propositions. It's really difficult to get that data synthesized so you can leverage it. But I think it's a bit of everything, and we're starting to see an acceleration. I mean, I started this journey doing cloud and pre-AI, but starting to put those enablers in about 5 years ago, and now I'm starting to see an acceleration that's happening. So I think that's exciting because it means we're starting to stabilize and mature at a pace that will enable us to gain some benefit from it. I don't know what you think, Andrew.
I just echo all of that. You know, there's a multitude of challenges across a lot of different areas. I think the only one that I'd add and build on is, you know, for us in particular, this is about also the customer experience, and we're learning like the potential of this technology to kind of do that leapfrog in terms of customer experience, so that we can, you know, we're behind the fintechs. Can we leapfrog them? Who knows? But yeah, so you know, what is the art of the possible with these capabilities, and how do we apply them into our channels? Yeah, that's another big area of learning for us as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll keep that with our banking colleagues there. There was another hand. We've got several. Right. If we can keep these pretty short and sharp, I'll be very grateful.
Thank you. Hi. So a few years back, we had robotics, which had become a fad, and then it went on to hyper-automation. I don't really personally sense that AI will meet that end, but one of the biggest requirements for AI to be successful is a robust data architecture. And I think the fintechs do have that leeway because they are relatively new. But what about the big institutions? To get a robust data architecture is going to take a long time. So will AI then be impactful for them?
I mean, I can only talk for the institutions that I've been in, and they've been varied. So, you know, I've been at a few now in the UK, and interestingly, the youngest one it felt very similar to the oldest one I'd been in, so I won't name any names, but I think it's a challenge as a whole, but which is why, you know, there is an awareness of the need to partner. There's an awareness and the need to collaborate. And I think there's an appetite now for us to start to do that. And you're seeing transformations in the style of partnerships that some of these bigger institutions are undertaking. So yeah, I think we're aware that we're probably constrained and maybe don't have the skills and the resources and the information that we have. But we have all of the insights and all of the real gold in the transactional and customer information. So partnering and co-creating with some of the smaller fintechs or larger fintechs to enable us to capitalize on it is really sort of where we're heading.
Yeah, I just butt in. I'm not from the banking sector, but I think when you talk about data architecture, AI places different demand on data architectures, right? And one of the things we have to be cognizant of is the fact that people will have mobility to go from one financial institution to another, to hold multiple credentials. We're seeing that we're moving to a world of wallets, and those wallets will hold multiple payment credentials, multiple loans, and you've got to have some interoperability there, right? And the other, and once you have that, that means that no one institution can hold all the data to service AI. So the demand is for a data layer that meets AI interoperability requirements, and I don't think that's been defined yet. At the moment, the route we're going is that the big data centers and the big cloud providers and the big chip manufacturers will do it all on their own, and that's not going to work, right? You know, for this to work, you need to have interoperability. You need to have a data layer on top that allows the sharing of data with the associated rewards, and that is the key to cracking this next phase, in my opinion.
I would just add, and resilience.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That, yeah.
Important word. I will just jump back to the audience. I saw another couple of hands. Yep, one there. Again, if we can keep this relatively quick, I'd be grateful.
Thank you. How much of the pathway that's being forged ahead with through AI is actually being done for the sake of being done rather than what customers want, especially given that we have an aging population, many of whom aren't actually connected or as connected as they could be?
I think that's a really, really good question and a challenge. And I'll actually reflect on, I saw yesterday or day before, I think Google Gemini announced their Gemini tool with 12 million or some tokens, right? So, in one interaction, you can exchange 12 million tokens with Google Gemini as compared to 28,000 in OpenAI. I know it's all technical, but I was like wondering, like, why? What for? Right? So a lot of tech innovation is happening because of the tech's sake, right? And the why is being parked or being looked for. And I think I think somewhere it will balance out. It's not a bad thing, it's for the technology to lead sometimes to create new possibilities. But it's a very fair question, and I think personally I would always keep the why first and then the what and how follows.
I think it's a great question. I think there's an awful lot of VC money that's going to go up in smoke in the coming year, 2 years, because... yeah, exactly right. I think where you're focusing on operational efficiency, you're unlikely to fall foul of that because you're just trying to make the processes that you run and have better. But once you start pushing it out to customers, you've got to be mindful, and you're quite right. Not everybody's ready. Some people still want to go into a branch. Yep. You can't forget that.
I think we're also thinking about, how can AI work for all segments of our customer base, particularly vulnerable customers, and how do these technologies hold the potential to unlock better banking services for those audiences as well. And so for us, it's not necessarily as blanket as, young people AI, old people not AI. It's kind of beholden on us as a responsible bank to find the channels to bring the best experience to those people. And if that's about finding different ways or new ways to bring AI technology into branches or into telephony, those channels not as traditionally necessarily associated with AI, then I think we're keen to explore that.
And it does raise one question. Sorry, please go.
It's okay. No, I was just going to say on that point, I think, it's about seeing this phase of our AI journey on this planet as a co-creation journey. So a lot of these use cases and interactions we're learning. So Jason mentioned about monitoring and the need for monitoring. I think that's hugely important because we're going to see how people interact and it'll allow us to adapt. So, and I think that's going to be a really important phase for us.
Yeah. You took, no, I was going to say exactly the same thing. Customer experience is clearly king, right? And we've seen hype cycles before, metaverse, Web3, now it's AI. I believe all of these technologies will work together. And the biggest challenge is, how do we interact with this thing called AI? How do you interact with it online, right? So you've got an AI robot, you've got an AI agent, am I just going to text, am I going to speak to? I want to see something physical. And for the older people, they'll want familiar surroundings, right? So that brings spatial computing as a key enabler to interacting and having a good customer experience. And the same thing in the physical environment. When you go into a branch, how are you going to interact with AI? Is it going to make sense? And those are some of the challenges maybe prompting the next question that you have, right? Which is how does AI manifest itself and interact with people? And I don't think we've cracked that yet. Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid that next question isn't going to come because we are right up on time and we are going to have to wrap things up there. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't get to put you all on the spot. None of you are sorry about that whatsoever. As I said, we are up on time. We could have spoken about this all afternoon, but we are going to have to leave things there. But a warm thank you to David, to Nelson, to Powan, to Andrew and to Isabel.
Thank you.